Julie Andrews is now 90 years old, and after a lifetime spent bringing joy, warmth, and comfort to millions of people, she has finally reached a place where she feels ready to speak openly about the painful parts of her past. For decades, the world saw her as the definition of grace and purity. She was Mary Poppins, floating down from the sky with a smile and a song. She was Maria von Trapp, filling a cold house with music and love. Her voice sounded so clear and perfect that it felt almost magical, as if nothing dark or cruel could ever touch someone like her. Yet behind that radiant smile and that angelic voice was a story she carried in silence for more than 70 years, a story shaped by fear, poverty, betrayal, and survival. Julie Andrews was born on October 1, 1935, in Walton-on-Thames, Surrey, England. The world she entered was already struggling. The Great Depression had drained families of security and hope, and the threat of war loomed closer with every passing year. Her parents, Barbara and Edward Wells, were doing their best to survive, but life was hard from the beginning. They lived in small, overcrowded spaces where privacy did not exist and comfort was a luxury they could not afford. When World War II officially began in 1939, the family's situation worsened. They were forced into some of the poorest areas of London, places where there was no indoor plumbing, no electricity, and barely enough room to move. At times, Julie slept on the floor simply because there was nowhere else to sleep. Then came the Blitz. From September 1940 to May 1941, London was bombed again and again, night after night. For 57 consecutive nights, the sky filled with sirens, explosions, and fire. Fear became a normal part of daily life. Julie's family rushed to shelters repeatedly, listening to the city shake and crumble above their heads. Food was rationed so strictly that even basic items like sugar, meat, and clothing felt precious. These were not distant memories passed down through stories. This was the world Julie grew up in, a childhood shaped by hunger, noise, and constant uncertainty. Amid all this chaos, another truth lay hidden beneath the surface. Julie grew up believing that Edward Wells was her biological father. That belief gave her a sense of stability in an otherwise unstable life. It was not until she was 15 years old, during a deeply painful family moment, that her mother finally told her the truth. Barbara confessed that she had had an affair with a family friend before Julie was born, and that Edward was not her real father. The news shattered Julie's sense of identity. Everything she thought she knew about herself suddenly felt fragile. Even more unsettling was the realization that she had already met her biological father at a social gathering when she was 14, without knowing who he truly was. His name was never revealed publicly, not even in her memoirs, and the secret remained locked inside her for decades, quietly influencing how she viewed trust, family, and love. Money was always a struggle. Edward Wells earned very little as a metalwork teacher, barely enough to cover rent and food. There was no indoor toilet, no electricity, and no room for comfort. Julie wore clothes made from old garments her parents stitched together, and she often went barefoot, even in the cold winter months. When her parents divorced in 1939, life did not improve. Julie moved with her mother into a new household that included her stepfather, Tony Andrews, a professional singer. This new home was ruled by alcohol. Both adults drank heavily, and neglect became part of everyday life. Julie learned early how to make herself small, quiet, and invisible. As Tony's drinking worsened, Julie began to feel unsafe. She eventually put a lock on her bedroom door to protect herself from his behavior when he was drunk. Years later, she would speak openly about this, acknowledging how deeply it scarred her. In that house, childhood ended far too soon. The war continued outside, offering no pause for personal pain. When Julie was just 4 years old, bombs fell on London almost every night. She remembered the cold air of the shelters, the packed spaces, and the heavy silence filled with fear. One memory stayed with her forever, her mother playing the piano inside the shelter, letting music rise above the chaos. In those moments, music became a shield, a place to hide and feel safe. Julie listened carefully and began copying the singers she heard on the radio. By the age of 5, she had developed an almost perfect sense of pitch. Fear surrounded her, but sound gave her control. Her gift quickly became impossible to ignore. She could mimic radio singers with stunning accuracy, and her parents soon began bringing her onstage during vaudeville performances. Applause became something she could rely on, something predictable and warm, unlike her home life. Still, her existence felt split in two. She moved between households, never truly settled, always searching for safety. That instability fueled her need to be perfect when she performed. On stage, she felt protected. By the age of 12, Julie made her professional solo debut at the London Hippodrome, singing to a packed audience. The crowd saw a confident young performer with extraordinary talent. They did not see the frightened child behind the curtain. Vaudeville became her entire world, but it came at a cost. After her mother married Tony Andrews in 1940, they formed a musical act confusingly called the Andrews Sisters, despite having no connection to the famous American trio. Julie, still just a child, sang backup in smoky, crowded music halls, sometimes for hours at a time. Child labor laws were already a concern, but the performances continued. The travel was exhausting, the pressure constant, and there was little room for play or rest. In 1943, while touring Scotland during harsh winter weather, Tony's drinking led to another terrifying moment. One night, drunk and desperate for warmth, he tried to get into Julie's bed, pretending it was harmless. Julie locked her door in fear. She told no one. She carried that experience alone for decades, finally sharing it in her 2008 memoir, Home, a memoir of my early years. It was not an isolated incident. Alcohol made Tony unpredictable, and the household remained tense and unsafe. Barbara often stayed silent, afraid of losing their income. Julie learned to endure quietly, pushing her feelings deep inside. When Julie was 10, something began to change. In 1945, she auditioned for BBC Radio, and her voice stunned everyone who heard it. Her rare 4-octave range filled the room, offering beauty and hope in a country still recovering from war. That same year, she sang at a charity show in London, drawing large audiences hungry for something uplifting. By 11, she was being promoted as a child prodigy. People clung to her voice as they rebuilt their lives. Touring became even more intense, with long drives, shared dressing rooms, and constant exhaustion. Despite her growing success, life at home remained broken. Tony's drinking worsened, and during one hotel stay, he attempted to harm her again. This time, her mother stepped in but quickly downplayed the incident to protect their act and their income. The performances continued. Tony began forgetting lyrics and stumbling on stage, forcing Julie to adapt quickly. She did so instinctively, and audiences admired her professionalism. By 1947, she was earning enough money to buy herself her first proper dress, a small but meaningful victory in a life filled with compromises. Pressure became normal for her. It shaped her resilience in ways applause never could. By the time she crossed the Atlantic, she was no longer just a talented child. She was a survivor. On September 30, 1954, at 18 years old, Julie Andrews stepped onto the Broadway stage at the Royal Theatre in New York in The Boyfriend. The show was a massive success, running for hundreds of performances and earning critical praise. On opening night, she hit a soaring note that left the audience in awe. Her talent felt unreal, yet her life offstage remained simple and disciplined. When she was cast as Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady in 1956, Julie quietly changed Broadway history. Watching her transform on stage felt deeply real, as if audiences were witnessing not just a performance, but a reflection of her own journey. Behind the elegance and poise was a woman who had endured more than anyone ever imagined. Julie Andrews did not just sing her way into history. She survived her way there, carrying pain, strength, and grace every step of the journey. During one preview performance, right in the middle of the famous Rain in Spain scene, Julie accidentally slipped into her real Cockney accent instead of the carefully practiced one she was supposed to use. For a brief second, it felt like a mistake that could break the illusion. But something unexpected happened. The timing was so perfect, and the sound so natural, that the audience burst into laughter much louder than anyone anticipated. The moment felt alive and honest. Instead of correcting it or removing it, the director decided to keep it exactly as it happened. That small accident became one of the most loved and remembered moments in the entire show, proof that Julie's instincts on stage were as powerful as her training. When My Fair Lady officially opened on March 15, 1956, Julie Andrews' life changed almost overnight. Her complete control over accents, her sharp comic timing, and the emotional depth she brought to Eliza Doolittle impressed critics and audiences alike. She earned a Tony nomination and became a star before she truly understood what fame even meant. She was still young, still learning, and still carrying the weight of her past, yet suddenly she was standing at the center of Broadway's biggest success. Sharing the stage with her was Rex Harrison, who played Professor Henry Higgins. He was widely known for being brilliant but also incredibly difficult to work with. Rehearsals were long, exhausting, and often tense. Harrison demanded perfection from everyone around him, especially himself, and that pressure spilled over onto the cast. He sometimes pushed a single scene through dozens of takes, once stretching a moment to 47 attempts because he kept forgetting his lines. Julie was new to this level of intensity. She was young, disciplined, and deeply focused. Instead of reacting with frustration, she stayed calm. She listened carefully, waited patiently, and did her job without complaint. Over time, her quiet professionalism slowly wore down his resistance, and he began to respect her, even if he never fully softened. Offstage, however, Harrison could be cruel. He mocked Julie privately, calling her the little virgin from England and questioning her experience, implying she was too innocent or inexperienced to stand beside him. Julie never responded publicly. She carried herself with dignity and let her work speak for her. None of that tension reached the audience. On stage, their chemistry was undeniable. Harrison struggled with his voice and nerves, especially during musical moments, but Julie's steadiness helped anchor the entire production. During difficult performances, her calm presence held the show together. My Fair Lady went on to run for 2,717 performances, making it one of the longest-running musicals of its time. Julie Andrews' name became inseparable from Eliza Doolittle. She did not just play the role, she defined it. That is why the announcement of the 1964 film adaptation shocked so many people when it was revealed that Julie would not be cast. Jack Warner decided not to take a chance on a stage actress with no film experience and instead chose Audrey Hepburn for the role. For Julie, the decision was deeply painful, even though she tried not to show it. She had built Eliza from the ground up. She had lived inside the character night after night. Fans and critics openly questioned the decision, and many felt it was unfair. Years later, Julie addressed it with grace and humor. At the 1964 Golden Globe Awards, where she was nominated for a different role, she made a pointed joke that made the room laugh while quietly acknowledging the truth behind the situation. It was her way of reclaiming her dignity without bitterness. Still, the disappointment stayed with her longer than she admitted. Even during the height of her Broadway success, Julie pushed herself harder than anyone asked her to. She stayed late after rehearsals, repeating phonetic drills and practicing accents until her voice trembled from exhaustion. She believed that effort could fix anything and that discipline was the answer to every challenge. After one 14-hour rehearsal, she collapsed from exhaustion. It was an early warning sign of the vocal strain that would follow her later in life, but at the time, she ignored it. She was focused on proving herself and staying perfect. That relentless work ethic paid off financially as well. Her weekly salary rose to $2,000, a remarkable amount for the time, especially for someone her age. For the first time in her life, she was able to buy her own apartment in New York. After years of instability, poverty, and fear, she finally had a place that belonged to her. Fame was arriving quickly, whether she felt ready for it or not. By 1960, Julie returned to Broadway in Camelot, playing Queen Guinevere opposite Richard Burton. The show became legendary, but behind the scenes it was filled with tension and chaos. Burton's drinking was a constant problem and often slowed rehearsals. Recording their duet took more than 20 takes because he struggled to stay focused and consistent. Julie arrived prepared every single time. She never raised her voice or showed frustration. Instead, she quietly carried a thermos of tea and shared it with Burton during breaks, hoping it might steady him. That small act of kindness became a backstage legend, remembered long after the show ended. Despite the difficulties, the cast recording of Camelot became a classic. The chemistry between Julie and Burton survived the strain holding it together, largely because of her patience and emotional intelligence. Camelot also brought another challenge when Julie clashed with director Moss Hart. He wanted Queen Guinevere to be pure, gentle, and almost delicate. Julie disagreed. She believed the character needed depth, quiet desire, and emotional conflict to make sense of the love triangle at the heart of the story. Her insistence unsettled producers and caused tension in rehearsals, but she refused to back down. Julie made small but meaningful changes in posture, tone, and timing that reshaped the role. These choices gave the character more humanity and complexity. Theatre historians later credited her performance with modernizing the role and expanding how women could be written and portrayed in musical theatre. Without raising her voice or demanding attention, Julie changed expectations simply by trusting her instincts. In 1957, in the middle of all her stage success, Julie stepped into live television for Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella on CBS. The broadcast reached an estimated 107 million viewers, nearly 60% of the entire country. During the live performance, a glass slipper prop shattered on stage. It could have ruined the moment. Julie did not panic. She smiled and calmly said, "It's the thought that counts." The line turned a potential disaster into a magical, memorable moment. Critics praised her composure, and the performance earned her an Emmy nomination. It also proved that live television could be just as powerful and meaningful as Broadway. Back on Camelot, Richard Burton's struggles continued. There were nights when he forgot lyrics or lost focus in the middle of songs. Once, during If Ever I Would Leave You, he faltered badly. Without hesitation, Julie stepped in, extending the moment and improvising just enough to carry the scene forward. Crew members whispered among themselves that she was the real reason the show survived. Julie never took credit. She believed doing the work was enough. After Camelot, Julie shocked the industry by turning down the lead role in Funny Girl. She feared being boxed into one type of character and felt the role did not fit her image or instincts. When the film version later became a massive success and turned Barbra Streisand into a superstar, Julie quietly regretted the decision. It became one of Broadway's great what-if stories, a reminder that even the most careful choices can carry unexpected consequences. Her next step came from an unexpected place. Walt Disney himself saw her perform on stage and believed she had something rare. Despite her lack of film experience, he cast her as Mary Poppins. It was a decision that would change her life forever and introduce her to audiences around the world, not just as a stage legend, but as a timeless icon. Filming for Mary Poppins began in February 1964 in Burbank, California, on large sound stages carefully painted and designed to look like London streets. Everything looked magical on screen, but behind the scenes the work was demanding and often frightening for Julie Andrews. She recorded the song A Spoonful of Sugar in just one take, showing her natural precision and control, but the rooftop scenes were another matter entirely. Being lifted high into the air on wires triggered a deep fear of heights she did not know she had. The anxiety became so intense that she needed therapy just to continue filming. Long shooting days often stretched to 18 hours, and the tight corsets she had to wear caused constant back pain. Exhaustion followed her every day, and more than once she seriously thought about quitting. Still, she stayed. She always stayed. Quietly, without making a show of it, she also helped Dick Van Dyke with his Cockney accent. The studio did not give him proper training, and the accent later became famous for being very inaccurate. Julie never criticized him publicly and never embarrassed him. Instead, she focused on the heart of the film and the story they were telling together. During the chimney scenes, real soot caused allergic reactions and breathing problems for the cast. Even then, Julie pushed forward and fought for changes to the song Feed the Birds, shaping it with deep emotion drawn from her own difficult childhood. That scene went on to become one of the most powerful and emotional moments in the entire film. Mary Poppins earned around $12 million and turned Julie Andrews into a film star almost overnight. Disney immediately wanted a sequel, but Julie surprised everyone by saying no. Her body was worn down, and she was deeply tired. Walking away shocked studio executives, but it showed that she valued her health more than fame or momentum. It was a decision rooted in survival, not fear. In 1965, while filming The Sound of Music, Julie did not simply show up and smile for the camera. She worked relentlessly to make the character of Maria von Trapp feel real and grounded. She hiked long distances in the Austrian Alps while dressed in a nun's habit, even when no one could see how exhausted she was. The famous opening scene where she spins on the mountaintop looks effortless, but it was anything but. The location was remote, deep into Bavaria, and the crew used a helicopter to capture aerial shots. The helicopter's strong downdraft kept throwing her to the ground over and over again. After about 10 frustrating takes, she was covered in dirt and hay, struggling to keep patience on her face while maintaining the joy the scene required. During another hike for a later scene, she twisted her ankle badly. Still, she insisted on continuing and retaking shots without painkillers so the performance would remain consistent from take to take. The weather was cold, the terrain steep, and there were no nearby facilities. Sometimes she was outside for hours with only one crew member hidden nearby, shouting directions through a megaphone. What audiences remember as light and joyful moments were built on discomfort, pain, and determination. The same dedication followed her into the Do Re Mi sequence, one of the most beloved scenes in film history. Behind the scenes, it was a long struggle against unpredictable weather and physical exhaustion. The sequence took nearly 2 months to film because weather delays kept disrupting the schedule. Director Robert Wise wanted strict, rehearsed movements that were clean and controlled. Julie felt differently. She believed the children needed to move naturally, because real children do not behave like machines. She worried that if everything felt stiff, the magic would disappear. To solve this, the team carefully measured steps and positions using storyboards and detailed notes, but Julie gently pushed the scenes toward life. She encouraged the child actors to add small spontaneous movements and improvised lines, many of which ended up in the final film. Even the bicycle riding scenes were not simple. They practiced for 2 months on studio lots before filming on location in Salzburg. At first, some people doubted her approach, but that looseness became a huge part of the film's charm. Eventually, Robert Wise embraced her instincts because he could see they were working. Julie took the role so seriously that she went beyond the script in private. She secretly met with members of the real Von Trapp family to understand who Maria truly was. She studied how she spoke, how she parented, and the energy she carried into a room. What she learned surprised her. The real Maria was actually quite strict, especially about discipline and diet. Julie tried to reflect that side in subtle ways. On set, she created structure for the child actors, even enforcing a no-sweets rule because she believed it would help them bond and feel more authentic as a family. One of the most touching moments came when the real Maria von Trapp appeared briefly in the film, walking with her daughter and granddaughter as Julie's Maria leaves the abbey. Years later, in 1973, they met again on the Julie Andrews Hour, where Maria taught Julie how to yodel properly. It felt like a gentle passing of the torch, full of warmth and mutual respect. Not everyone found the experience easy. During rehearsals for Edelweiss, Christopher Plummer struggled deeply. He was not a trained singer, and recording with a full orchestra made him extremely nervous. Privately, he jokingly referred to the film as The Sound of Mucus to release his frustration. The pressure was intense, with 75 musicians surrounding him and every mistake feeling enormous. Julie noticed his anxiety and did something simple but meaningful. She held his hand during the recording session to steady him. Most of his singing was later dubbed by Bill Lee, except for a few lines, but Julie's calm presence helped keep the environment supportive. Between long shooting days, the cast and crew shared local Salzburg recipes, building quiet bonds. Julie once even baked Christopher Plummer an apology pie after a tense moment, a small gesture that spoke volumes. Then the film exploded in success. The Sound of Music won 5 Academy Awards and earned around $286 million worldwide. Julie Andrews was no longer just famous. She was locked into a shining public image. In a 1966 interview, she admitted something that shocked many fans. She said she disliked being labeled as the perfect, sweet, good-natured figure and wanted more challenging roles. That honesty mattered. It showed there was a serious artist beneath the wholesome image, someone who wanted risk, depth, and surprise. That desire quietly shaped the rest of her career. In 1982, she proved she meant it by starring in Victor Victoria. She played Victoria Grant, a woman pretending to be a man who pretends to be a woman in 1930s Paris. The role was intense and demanding. Drag makeup tests could last up to 5 hours per session, involving prosthetics and facial hair designed to make her male disguise believable. She stunned audiences even more by performing a brief nude shower scene, a bold move for someone known for such a wholesome image. The film, directed by her husband Blake Edwards, earned her a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination. The strain was real, though. Rehearsals revealed vocal fatigue, and she insisted on singing live with piano accompaniment instead of lip-syncing because she wanted authenticity, even when it pushed her voice too far. That fight for depth continued into The Princess Diaries in 2001. Playing Queen Clarice Rinaldi, she pushed Disney to give the character more emotional weight. One major change she advocated for was a romance subplot with Joe, the palace chauffeur, which was not originally in the script. That addition gave the Queen a sense of regret, longing, and humanity, not just duty and rules. The film became a major success, earning over $165 million worldwide. The sequel continued the romance, ending with Clarice marrying Joe. It was a late career moment that proved Julie could still reshape a role from the inside. In 2004, she surprised audiences again by voicing the fairy godmother in Shrek 2. The role allowed her to gently poke fun at her own image, and the voice work felt freeing. She recorded her lines in just 4 days, yet the character became one of the film's biggest strengths. Sessions with Eddie Murphy were filled with laughter and playful improvisation. The film earned over $920 million worldwide and gave Julie a new spotlight where she was judged purely by her voice. After Blake Edwards passed away in 2010, grief hit her deeply. She isolated herself for months and later admitted she struggled with dark thoughts. What helped her heal was family and work that felt gentle rather than demanding. She began writing books with her daughter Emma, using writing as a form of therapy when her voice could no longer carry her the way it once had. In her 2008 memoir, Julie also revealed a painful truth she had carried for decades. She shared that her stepfather made inappropriate advances toward her when she was 9 and again at 12, and that her mother dismissed the incidents to protect their family act. The trauma stayed with her and affected her trust for many years. She spoke about forgiveness, but she never denied the lasting impact. Still, she continued to give back. She served as a Goodwill ambassador for the United Nations Development Fund for Women from 1992 to 2006, traveling to more than 50 countries and advocating for women's education and welfare. In 2020, it was reported that she donated $10 million from legal settlements to children's charities. Even in later years, her voice found new life as the narrator of Bridgerton. Her performance as Lady Whistledown became iconic. Reports in 2025 claimed she won a Creative Arts Emmy for the role, recording remotely from her Malibu home. She once joked that the role allowed her to gossip without guilt, as if she had finally found a playful place to store all the stories she had lived through.